So we got a problem, y'all. Some of us are confusing states and cities. And we need to know what the difference between a state and a city is for two reasons. Number one, we're not going to do well on our exams if we can't tell the difference between a state and a city. And number two, we're going to start making fools out of ourselves if people ask us what city we're from and we give them a state, or people ask us what state we're from and we give them a city. So we're going to solve this whole problem so that number one, we do well on our exams, and number two, we don't make fools out of ourselves. So let's move on. What is the difference between a city and a state? Well, I'm glad you asked. First, let's zoom out to look at the whole world. All right, the whole world is divided into giant land masses called continents. We got Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, yada, yada, yada. We live up here in North America, but North America is huge. So let's zoom in. North America, the continent, is separated into countries. It's separated into Canada in the north, the United States, and Mexico in the south. Now, the United States is the country we live in. It's smaller than a continent. But if we zoom into the United States, we see that our country is divided into different states. All right? So a state is even smaller than a country. And if we zoom into our state of Louisiana, we see that our state is divided into even smaller areas called parishes. Now, an important point here is that these are man-made boundaries, all right? People invented these boundaries. You don't actually go around the state and see the ground change colors, okay? These are just imaginary boundaries that people made, all right? So we're not going to find them on a physical map of the land. We're going to find them on a political map. Now, we live in Orleans Parish. It's in the southeast. An important point, though, only Louisiana divides itself into parishes. So if we hop over west to Texas, we see that it's divided into counties, okay? Counties are just like parishes. We just call them something different because the French called them parishes, and we were started by the French, so we do what the French do. But all states are divided into smaller areas. Most states call them counties. We call them parishes. I'm from this county. But let's get out of Texas. Let's hop back over east to Louisiana. So remember, we live in Orleans Parish. And if we look at the different parishes, we see dots, which are different cities, okay? These cities are urban communities inside the parishes. So a city is even smaller than a parish. Cities are urban communities inside parishes and inside states. Urban communities have big buildings, lots of people. They're surrounded by suburban communities with yards and smaller homes and stores and parks and things like that. And eventually we'll go all the way out in the country to rural communities. But wait, why are we talking about different types of communities? Let's get back to parishes. So let's look at another example. Now, to see the difference between cities and states, a really good example is New York, because New York is both a state and a city. There's a New York State and there's a New York City, and they're not the same thing. So here's a picture of New York State. Well, it's not a picture, it's a map of New York State. Okay? We see it's dotted with many different cities. Now, here's a picture of New York City. New York City is an urban community, lots of people, big buildings. It's the biggest urban community in the whole country. But it's still just a city. I can almost fit all of New York in one picture, okay? There's more out on the edges, but I can almost fit it all in one picture because it's only one community. A state is a much bigger piece of land. So if you want to see a picture of New York State, which I hope you do, then you would have to look at something like this. Now, this looks different than our picture of the city because the only way that we could fit the whole state in one picture is to take that picture from space. All right, so this is a picture taken by a satellite out in space. That's how far back you have to be to see the whole state. States are much bigger than cities. And there are many different cities within a state. So in New York, we have Buffalo, we have Albany, and we have New York City. We can zoom in on New York City. It's much smaller. I'm not zooming in on Brooklyn. All right. We can zoom in on New York City, and we can see more about New York City. But notice it's much smaller than the whole state. All right? It's just one urban community. Now, let's connect this back to Louisiana. You live in the state of Louisiana, and you live in the city of New Orleans. Louisiana is a state with many different cities. Cities are just communities inside these big pieces of land that we call states. Now, you're going to be filling out some questions on your worksheet, and I hope this will help clear it up, and we won't have this problem anymore, so we can do good on our exams and not make fools of ourselves. All right, good job, y'all. I'll see y'all next time.